Hello friends! I trained handstands for 30 days and this is my transformation. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I trained in those 30 days, what I would recommend, and what I would have done differently if I could go back. I'll show you how I improved my form and how my mindset shifted as time went on. And I'll share these tips that can help you achieve your handstand and improve your handstand too. By the way, hi, I'm Emily. Welcome to the channel. So happy to have you here. I'm a calisthenics girly who loves movement, so hit the thumbs up if you're enjoying the video to let me know it really supports my channel. Let's get straight into it. So day one, it's useful to know that when I started this 30-day handstand challenge, I already could hold a handstand for a decent amount of time. But as you can see in this initial video, I wobbled around a lot and I couldn't hold the handstand with good form without moving my hands. So after a little body warm up, I did some initial testing. Alrighty then friends, it's day number one, it's session number one. I'm nervous but excited. I'm gonna start by warming up, so I'm gonna go to do about 5 minutes of jogging to get the core body temp raised. I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, I'm back and I'm a little bit sweaty and it's time to get into the handstand workout. Do some dynamic stretches to warm up the arms and wrists. Let's do floor handstands now. Let's chat breakdown of how I actually structured my 30 days of handstand training. And a really important side note, I did not train handstands every single day for 30 days. I trained a handstand specific workout 3 to 4 times a week during the 30-day period. Each session was about 45 minutes or less. So my split looks like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday handstand session, depending on my level of soreness, with the other days, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday being off. And every once in a while, if I was super motivated, I would do handstands 2 days in a row, but for the most part, I stuck to every other day. I also did calisthenics training on certain other days of the week or after my handstand session so that I could continue to work on those other calisthenics goals that I have in my life and improve my overall fitness and strength, you know, the good stuff. And I would say that about 90% of the moves in those other calisthenics workouts, aside from my handstand training, were not specifically beneficial to improving my handstand, so we don't need to talk too much about those. But I will tell you some specific handstand exercises that I did incorporate into my workouts. More on that later. Okay, so at the beginning of my handstand training, basically the first week, I did my 5-minute handstand warm-up. Began with some wall practice and improving my shoulder engagement. Then I moved to floor handstands, tuck handstands, and finished with a core and shoulder workout that's about 5 minutes or so. Here's some screenshots of the first 3 handstand sessions. And what you'll notice is that my workout routine actually evolved as we went on during those 30 days and as I found techniques that worked better and improved my handstand faster. Okay, so what I learned week 1 is that shoulder and scapula engagement and activation exercises are so important before actually starting your handstands. And once I started doing an extra 5 minutes or so of warm-up and specific shoulder exercises before I jumped into handstands, I was able to hold them for so much longer. And these were very light rotator cuff and shoulder strengthening and warm-up exercises. So about halfway into week 2, I started adding in these activation exercises at the beginning of every single handstand session, and they really helped me. I also knew that as I was starting week 1, handstand form was a huge problem for me. If you look at a video of your handstand, you're gonna think about wanting your joints to be stacked over each other. So wrists over shoulders over hips in a nice straight line. Because the more stacked that your joints are, the easier it is for you to hold that handstand. And if one part of your body sticks too far out from that symmetrical line, muscles on the other side of your body have to compensate, making your handstand much harder. So for example, in my starting handstand, you can see that my feet are piking out in front of me and my butt sticks out behind me. The cause of this is what hand balancers like to call banana back. So my lumbar spine is naturally very flexible and the muscles supporting my lumbar spine are quite weak. So when my back arches, my butt sticks out behind me, my feet pike forward, and my shoulders have to overcompensate. And they were not that strong to start. So around week 2, I realized that I was practicing my floor handstands with a banana back and I realized I had to re-strategize. So starting midway through week 2, I made 2 big changes. One, I started using the wall much more and for longer periods of time during my workout in order to practice my scapular engagement in good form. And two, I started incorporating exercises that allowed me to develop a posterior pelvic tilt and keep my hips from shifting into that anterior tilt position with them forwards. And the three main wall exercises that I use and I would recommend you use are tuck slides, one leg tuck slides, and straddle slides. And this is also where mindset shift number one occurred, because in order for all of these handstand exercises and training and workouts to actually improve my handstand, I needed to really focus on getting my form right. So that means I focused on form and went really slow for a few reps of each exercise. And moving back to the wall to do more handstand exercises after I started being able to do them on the floor was a little bit of an ego hit right there, you know? And when I took these wall exercises super slow and focused on form, they felt unnecessarily hard because I just hadn't been engaging the proper muscles and developing the correct form in the first place. And for the first week, these wall exercises felt harder and it felt like I was backtracking in progress. But the next week that changed, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But overall, at this point, I knew that relearning form was really, really important. And strengthening the muscles I needed to engage my lower back correctly was going to improve my handstand form. So when I was focusing on my form at the wall, there are a few things that I really emphasized. And these were squeezing my shoulders over my ears, engaging my scapulas, aka your shoulder blades, so that they were squeezed together and back, keeping my shoulders aligned with my hips by having a posterior pelvic tilt, locking my elbows so that they weren't bent, and keeping my eyes on the floor, right in between my hands. Now, if you're on your handstand journey, I would really recommend that you start with tuck slides at the wall, then progress to one leg tuck slides before even thinking about doing the straddle slides. And that's because the main thing that you should be focusing on when you're at the wall is engaging your scapulas and shoulders to have that correct form. So really focusing on leg movement, which you do during the straddle slides, is not as important if you're just starting out. The wall straddle definitely helped my leg engagement and activating my leg muscles. And what I noticed is I actually had to really squeeze my hamstrings in order to get my legs from that pike position into that straight line, which was not easy for me at first. Two of the amazing core activation exercises that I did and I would really recommend are hollow holds, of course, and flipped hollow holds with foam rollers. I do want to note that if you're trying the flipped hollow holds with the foam rollers, before you try these, just make sure that you're super warmed up, especially in your arms and shoulders because they can be pretty intense, and you can move the foam rollers closer to each other, so towards your elbow and your quads, in order to make the exercise easier. With the whole point being to keep your lower back from arching and just maintain it in that flat position, the posterior pelvic tilt. Okay, so my updated handstand session looks like a 5-minute warm-up, core and shoulder activation exercises, then wall handstands, then floor handstands, finishing with some handstand specific exercises and stretching. And around week 3, I had another mindset shift, so I really started to look forward to getting my handstand workout in the next morning. And I almost always did handstands in the morning because of my life and schedule. I just did not have time later in the day. Plus I was way less motivated to go work out at the end of the day, but I would wake up super excited to go do my handstand session. And so this is probably the point where I started to become very obsessed with handstands, and obsessed in the way of I was so excited to do them. And my handstand routine for weeks 3 and 4 looked almost identical. Of course, really emphasizing those activation exercises at the beginning of the workout. I did mention I do some calisthenics workouts throughout the rest of the week, and I did incorporate a few exercises that are more handstand specific into those workouts to progress my handstand further, and these are the exercises that I did. So those are the pancake, hollow holds, of course, plank, and pike press ups. And mindset shift number 3 occurred during week 4 when I realized that I'm obsessed with handstands. And I realized that this is going to be a long-term training style that I'll be incorporating in for a long time. I got so excited to do handstand workouts. Honestly, some days I felt really tempted to skip my calisthenics workout or a rest day so that I could do a handstand session. And on these days, I actually had to use willpower to take the rest day or to go to my calisthenics session instead of replacing it with a handstand session. So I had to really stick to the power of my schedule because I wanted to be very cautious to not overdo it. I know a lot of people can have injuries if they go too hard too soon on their shoulders or wrists, or if they don't warm up properly. So I was just trying to be very overly cautious about that and not doing handstands every single day, as much as I would have loved to do that. All right, so a few finishing thoughts and tips for you if you're doing handstands and if you're on a journey right now. So I used the wall for about 70% of my workouts, and even though I used the wall for much more of my handstand session, my handstand floor work significantly improved because I built up that shoulder and core activation and strength. So don't be afraid of the wall. Even if it feels like you're going backwards because you're going from the floor to the wall, you're not. Focus on that form, And if you think about it, working at the wall for 30 to 40 seconds is going to add up to be a lot more in the long run rather than a 15 or 10-second handstand on the floor. 2, I would really recommend that you ease slowly into doing handstands if you're not doing them at all right now. Of course, depending on your starting level, I've been doing handstands a while, so going straight to 2 hours of extra handstanding sessions per week wasn't that crazy for me. And I was super careful about taking my rest days. But just be mindful to kind of ease into it and not go from no handstands ever to 7 days of handstands a week. I would not recommend. Would not recommend that. We don't want to get injured. We want to keep everything feeling good, you know? So tip number 3, handstands are both strength and mobility. And some people will compensate with their balance more and need to really focus on building their strength, like me, while others will overcompensate with their strength and would really benefit from a little bit of extra mobility and balance training. And one way to check which group you're in is to look at your form. And in general, tracking your form is super useful for handstands. So I would say probably the number 1 tip that I have if you're seriously starting your handstand journey and want to figure out maybe what part of your handstand isn't going so well, I would really recommend videotaping yourself so that you can watch back the footage and check your form. Check your alignment. Are your hands stacked over your shoulders, stacked over your hips? Does your back arch? Do your feet come out in front of you or do they flop behind you? Recording yourself also really helps because when you watch back the footage, you can compare with what you thought you were doing and what you thought it felt like to what it actually looked like. So a lot of the time I mentioned my legs pegged forward, I would watch back my video and think, wow, I really felt like I was engaging my legs, but obviously I'm not. So I would have to focus on engaging my hamstrings even more to push them into that straight position. So it takes a little bit of an extra mental effort to focus on those things. But watching back the video can help a lot in this aspect. So those are my main tips. Of course, I'm super happy with the outcome of this journey and I'm obsessed with handstands now, so lots of that on my Instagram in case you're curious. And now I'm training for the Stalder press, which is the press to handstand. So stay tuned for an update on that in a few months. Don't forget to hit subscribe to join the fam. I hope you're able to take some handstand tips away from this video to implement in your own routine and to level up your handstand too. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.